think it's about that time that we talk about a little game called. Wait, where is it? It's a little game called Animal Crossing. We're talking about Animal Crossing. I think it's time for the breakdown, the intellectual, really deep dive into what this series is all about. Now, each Animal Crossing is different, and I'd like to cover all of them here. So it's going to take a minute, and then after we kind of cover the basics for each of the games that have been released in the series, we're going to take a bit of a even deeper dive into what is the current most popular take on the lore of Animal Crossing, I guess. Basically, there's an article I'm going to take a look at the towards the end of the video. That is quite an interestingly titled one, so we'll get there. We'll get there, and I appreciate you tuning in because this is a describing of Animal Crossing, and Animal Crossing is unfortunately unlike Mario or Kirby or something like that. It's not nearly as deep or thought provoking on a conceptual level, though there is some stuff worth mentioning that I'll try to get to. But first, let's just talk about each of the games. We'll talk about each of the games sort of individually. Now, we're looking at the GameCube games footage here. And yeah, again, just for the record, I am using other people's footage here. This is Stone Monk Wisdom's footage. I appreciate that I can just do that. I hope he doesn't mind. If he does, sorry. You can just let me know. I'll, remove the video or something. Because I'm going to be doing that a lot here. I didn't have the time to just fetch all this different footage, but anyways, you can find it yourself and go give them your love and support if you want to watch this whole video. I'm not going to be watching the whole thing by any means. That's beyond the point. I'm rambling here. Anyways, so GameCube Animal Crossing starts you out like this. You're on this train, and you like the name pervert. You're on this train. It's pretty much all you know is like KK Slider just meets you in this dark void room. And then he's like, yo, life's cool, whatever. You're like, okay, whatever. Then you're on this train and, you're just kind of chilling. And then this kind of guy just comes, this little cat man named Rover just comes on over. He's like, hey, what's up? Oh, shit, you don't know what you're doing with your life? Wow, wouldn't that be crazy? And then you're like, he asks you all these questions. And this is your chance to name your town. So in a way, you named your town, you named yourself, all in this moment. In a sense, you are born here. This is when you are born. The world becomes your. The sense of humor of this gameplay footage is top notch. I gotta say, it's just you gotta love it. You're moving to your dick. Great, excellent. But so in a sense, your character is born here, and this happens in every Animal Crossing game. There's kind of like an intro sequence in which you decide things. Now it's debatable whether or not that's canon. That's up to you, I guess, and that's a big part of Animal Crossing lore is how deep it is kind of up to you. Because you can really read into it, or you can just kind of accept that it's very surface level, and I like to read more into it than necessary for the sake of this video. So Rover goes off, and he talks to Tom Nook on the phone, as we see him doing here. He just knows Tom Nook, which is convenient, because Tom Nook's the only person in the GameCube town who can do anything, really, for you. He just so happens to build houses, but he also runs the local shop. So pretty much is your entire life source. It's a small rural town that you move to in the GameCube rendition of Animal Crossing. And it's already sort of semi-pre-established, so there's already people living there. And so you might be wondering, what's like the deal with the GameCube lore? So what's going on with that? Everyone just has this like rural little town, and there's it's all connected by these trains. Well, I'd like to think that this is sort of in the early era. Like it's kind of almost deliberate. Like there's a timeline to the Animal Crossing universe, and in this case, this is sort of the earliest era, which is natural because this is the earliest game in the series, essentially. Unless we're going to get super technical and talk about the Nintendo 64 game, which is the same thing. Anyways, anyways, without getting too into specifics, this is kind of like the early days when civilization is still in its sort of infancy in this world, and so it's mostly just connected by train, which the train tracks do remain in the world, but not every piece of civilization across the world is interested in using them. And I think that's a good way of sort of segueing into our next video. Our next video, which is the intro to Animal Crossing Wild World. And so, in the beginning of Animal Crossing Wild World, it's been a little bit of time since the Animal Crossing GameCube world. Now, you might be like saying, well, where's the evidence for that? Well, I'd like to think that the evidence is that they now have a road system that can connect towns too. It's a bit nebulous because road systems are, whether or not that's more advanced than a train system is kind of debatable on some level. But I do think that overall it's a little bit later in the timeline, not by much. It's still kind of around the same time frame. Things are still generally rural, generally kind of low-key in the Animal Crossing universe. And we can kind of see that basically in this game, you start out in a taxi, and there's this guy, Cap'n, who's driving you. Now, Cap'n in the GameCube game is a sailor, and as a sailor, he basically kind of takes this boat, and he brings you to this private island in the GameCube game. Well, let's just say that that's basically what Cap'n was doing for quite a few years before. But I think something happened, and that is he needed money, and he was realizing that it wasn't really paying the bills to be a boat chauffeur, essentially, to bring you to a private island, because you weren't really paying him in the GameCube game. So he decided to move on with his career and become a taxi driver. And in this instance, the Wild World player is now a part of his cab. He actually doesn't really know where he's going, and that's a big part of the Animal Crossing deal in these first two games. Is you don't really your character's just kind of saying fuck it. Like he just hopped in a car and he's like, I'm done. Like I'm out. Like all your character knows is they're done. They didn't bring any money. They didn't bring nothing. They're just like, I'm out. I'm moving away from my parents. I'm going somewhere. Doesn't matter where. Just take me there. And that's kind of what's going on here in this game. And that's what's kind of interesting is this sort of becomes slightly more complex over time throughout the series. And in Wild World, there's really not much more to say that's distinctive about it or different. But you'll notice here how Cap'n doesn't. Where's the road? Where does this car come from, and where does it go? We don't know. And in fact, it's actually interesting because there might be like a secret road system that's like low-key involved in the Animal Crossing universe, but it becomes kind of irrelevant in the later games. We'll talk about that in a minute. And for Wild World, there's not really a whole lot going on. What you do need to know is the mayor, Tortimer. This is also a good time to sort of get into this a little bit, which is that the Animal Crossing universe kind of has a implied multi-dimensionality to it, where, of course, the different games take place later in the timeline on some level. Like, there's some level of time progression between each of the titles. Not an extreme amount, especially at first, like I said, like between GameCube and Wild World. They're pretty similar in the timeline because I think, in the development aspect, if you think about it from a game design perspective, Nintendo was like, yo, we gotta make sure that this shit's not too different from the GameCube version. Otherwise, people are going to be like, what's going on here? I don't know if this is Animal Crossing anymore. Anyways, but as you can see, yeah, like the recycling bin in the GameCube game, there's a dump that you just throw stuff in, and like it's like on the ground. It's kind of a mess. You can see that society has progressed just a little bit here in this game. Anyways, like I was saying, there's like a multi-dimensionality to Animal Crossing where like basically Tortimer is kind of a pretty good example of this, where it kind of demonstrates that the Tortimer does age throughout the series. He ages and his position changes, and also like the Able sisters kind of have a narrative going on as well, which is those hedgehogs. If you're new to Animal Crossing, you have no idea what I'm talking about. There's these little, at least these hedgehogs characters that run the tailor shop, and what they do is basically they move shop all the time. They're always on the move, and they have this backstory with their sister, but they didn't really mention her too much before City Folk, but we'll get to that. So in this game, you kind of, it's kind of no different. But you see, they have a phone. You can call the Forest Civil Service Center or whatever I just said there, and yeah, so. There is a Tortimer still. There's still a mayor. Pelly and Phyllis, the post office is still involved. It's all still there. Right. Regular timeline. It's not going too crazy yet, but now this is where things get a little different. Next is where we get a little different, which is Animal Crossing City Folk here. Thank you, Yoshi Killer. And Animal Crossing City Folk is kind of like the beginning of the theoretical, not end isn't the right word, but shift in paradigm for this universe. Now you might be like saying, well, what does that mean? Well, you'll notice that now Cap'n is no longer a cab driver, but a bus driver. Now, Rover doesn't really let Cap'n be the guy to introduce you to the universe in this one. He's like, no, I'm here. I'm on the bus. What's going on? Tell me what time it is. Fuck you. You're going to tell me everything about yourself right now. And you're going to tell him it's 2008. That's great. Because that's, it's around the time this game came out. Anyways. So, in this game, they have buses, and they also have bigger, more established roads. Now, that still doesn't entirely answer the question that I have from the previous iteration of Animal Crossing, which is that it's still a little confusing. Still a little bit confusing with the whole bus thing, because you see your town gates right there. Bus comes in, enters left. You get off the bus. That's cool. Rover's like, yo, get over to the town hall. Confirm that Tortimer is still kicking. He's still the mayor. They leave. Where do they go? Where does that bus go? We're not going to find out. Unfortunately, the road system is still super complex in the Animal Crossing universe. No fucking clue how it works. Now you might be saying, the real Animal Crossing fans that are watching, they're probably saying, well, hold up. You said that the roads came in Animal Crossing Wild World. That's when that innovation came in. Well, Gracie has a car in the original Animal Crossing, the first one. So you might be saying, well, there's probably roads then, right? Well, I'd say yes, but they're probably they were more primitive then. They weren't as established as they are now, because Gracie probably had access to them because she was a high-class person, and so it was still kind of a new project at the time. But now I think that everyone is allowed on the roads. I think that the roads are established. By this point especially, because at this point there is now a city involved. You can now go to a city, and that means this is the part of the urbanization of Animal Crossing. This is a deep aspect to the lore that is kind of overlooked and kind of completely ignored in the sort of following games, because it's not like the entire universe of Animal Crossing is completely urbanized after this game. It's not what I'm implying, but it is kind of like an important shift in direction. Moving right along then, because there's not really too much going on other than the story with the Able sisters kind of develops in this game. The two hedgehogs kind of do their thing. They talk about how they have this sister who works for Gracie Grace, and you find you're the kind of character, your player character here discovers that. He's the one who discovers that and kind of links that bridge, and after that bridge is linked, it brings us to, I mean, it's not like the only thing in City Folk that's worth talking about, but I also don't want to sort of chat your ear off for hours about this. We still have some things to get to. So let's get to it with New Leaf. Chugga Connery, I don't think needs no introduction for this game footage. So New Leaf is kind of like taking it back to basics, but you'll also notice how much more modern this train looks. Right. So the train tracks still exist, but in my view, New Leaf is some of the only urbanized, like unurbanized sort of townage left on some level. Even then, there's still a lot of modernization that has occurred by the time New Leaf is happening. As you can see, the train is so much nicer. It's much more like a modern train that you would see in a city or something. So your character's kind of, it's still the mainland. You're still going there. You're still going to, start your town and all that. It's still the same deal. Your character's like, I don't know who I am. I'm just getting away from my parents. That's basically the only thing I know. I have no money. I have nothing. I'm just throw me to the wind. So basically in New Leaf, it's not too much different. You can tell that the sort of urbanization is kind of, it's creeping in. And it's probably a little bit later than City Folk, where the train tracks are still there, but it's sort of like everything's kind of going on. Where New Leaf also has a bit of distinctive storytelling that's worth describing, which is on the train, you're just like, okay, I guess I'm going to Pallet. I'm going here, sure. And then, when you arrive, there's this whole sequence where you're just assumed to be the mayor. Now, this is really more specific to New Leaf that I think is worth mentioning, is that that you were like set up to become the mayor, like just from the beginning. Like there was someone who was supposed to be the mayor, and like they somehow knew that you were going to be there, and you were going to be the one to come into this town. Now, that implies someone's watching you, that you have a stalker in New Leaf or something like that. Like, I don't think it was a malicious stalker, clearly, because they hooked you up. They were stalking you for a reason, but nonetheless, they were stalking you. They were saying, they were creeping on you, is what I'm saying. They were definitely creeping on your character, and they were like, you know what? I'm going to hook this kid up. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know where he's going. I am going to become a mayor. I'm the mayor, but I'm not going to be the mayor because I was elected or something. I mean, debatably, the mayor is elected in Animal Crossing. I mean, they don't hold any subsequent elections. You're just the mayor from now on. And of course, your character just goes with it. No questions asked. No fucking question asked. He just goes with it. Look at him. He's just like, yeah, I'm the mayor, whatever. And then Isabel's like following you around. Isabel gets introduced. She's sort of a new sort of splinter she's kind of a acknowledgement of the urbanization of Animal Crossing. She is a character who basically represents how much more modernized this universe feels in comparison to the old days. And now that she's there, you can kind of tell, like, okay, like, the game is more interested in listening to the player, and the player can now mold the world just that little bit more now that Isabel's involved. Tom Nook isn't just, Tom Nook is around. Tom Nook in this game, also worth mentioning, has a bit of a shift in position. He finally kind of got bored of being a shopkeep over the last, basically, I'd say it's been about 10 years or so. Since the beginning of the series, maybe longer if you want to really get into the deep dive, but yeah, it's pretty much one of those things where where he kind of got bored and he wanted to become a housing market guy. So that's kind of what he did in this game. Is he just decided, Nook's home, so he's talking about there on Main Street. Now you can't even escape urbanization in this game. You have a little rural town here, but in Main Street, you have this whole area, this whole urban area that becomes progressively more populated and urbanized as it goes. But you can see it's already like ready to go. It's already like prepared for urbanization. So this is just more proof to what I'm saying is that over the time, because of what happened in City Folk, which is that essentially the consumerism ran rampant and the general like vibe of success for all these different businesses kind of went crazy. And so now there's just a general more urbanized existence across the planet. Tom Nook got bored. There's the Able sisters as well, who now have been reunited with their sister in this game. I can't really show you footage of that, I'm sorry, but it is a thing, and that's because of what happened in City Folk. They kind of got bored of whatever town they were living in there, and they moved here to whatever this town is. And so there's kind of like this continuity. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make there, is there is like a slight continuity going on that I'm not just bullshitting about. There is like a slight continuity in the Animal Crossing games that does exist, but it's kind of strange. And in this game, Tortimer as well is worth mentioning, because Tortimer is no longer the mayor. He's no longer there anymore. But he does exist. He's still alive in this game, which is a pretty big, important detail, because I don't mean to spoil it, but he's probably not alive in Animal Crossing New Horizons. We don't know that for sure, because Animal Crossing New Horizons is kind of a different statement altogether. Which I think is probably worth getting to, but he's no longer the mayor in this game. He's like retired, and he's like a retired vacationer, and you can only find him on the island. That's cool, whatever. I'm gonna move along now to New Horizons, because that's the paradigm shift that's even more significant, and it implies so much more. Now, I won't say it's canon or it is the official lore about what I'm about to say about New Horizons, but let's just say for a second that in Animal Crossing New Horizons, the game starts off with this advertisement. It starts off with like this pitch. See, it's this getaway package. You're being proposed this concept. Nook is now a retired employer. He used to run shops. He got tired of that. He used to be a person who was interested in running shops and doing a business, and now he's a little tired of it, but he still, understands the need for that service. So he still wants his lineage, his children to, not his children, his nephews, I guess. I don't think they're his children. I should have my facts straight. It is a lore describing video. I'm sorry. It's my B. But look at this. It's basically a commercial for itself within the game. It's literally a commercial for what the game is in the game. And what that tells me is that your character is of a privileged few who get the chance to escape the mainland, because the mainland has become completely urbanized at this point. And that's the thing where I'm like, okay, if you're not really sure where there's no evidence to support that, you're kind of right. There isn't. But let's be honest here. Why else would he be getting to an island getaway? He wants that rural vibe again. He wants to get away from it. Now, he doesn't realize that you are the player character. He does not realize that you can do whatever you want to this place. He flies you out. You're one of these people. He flies you out, and he gets you on this island. Now, look at this. It's completely deserted. It's so rural. Nook is in love. Look at this. Loves it. Nook is in love with this island. You can almost taste it. He's escaped the rural, the urban reality that he once inhabited. Now he gets another chance. It's another town. He can finally, another place, these deserted islands. Perfect. We're not stealing this from anybody. It's just untamed land. Beautiful. Nothing wrong with that. But he still has his connections. He still has his economy from the urbanized lands. The people, your villager friends, also of a privileged few who get the opportunity to leave the urbanized rural lands, sorry, I keep calling them rural lands, the urbanized lands, and come to this world, and come out to these islands, and escape that, and get a chance of nice trees and in the breeze. I'm not saying there's no trees, or that the new leaf stuff is completely gone. There's probably still some rural townage going on the mainland, but let's be real here. These islands are a huge sign that This stuff is not simple. This shit got crazy in between New Leaf and New Horizons. Things got a little out of hand. There's too much shit going on in the universe of Animal Crossing that is happening on the mainland and is no longer viable for Nook to have a small town with a small shop and just these pleasant little villagers, and he got tired of all the noise and he wanted to get away, so he created this thing because he knew he couldn't do it alone, and he knew he needed to create an economy on the island because of course he does. He's Nook, he needs to create an economy. He's been living with economies his entire life, he doesn't know any different. So he brings you to this island, and he's fortunate that it's you because you're going to produce a lot of wealth for this island. And so it's like that's kind of the progression here. That's the progression. Everyone in New Horizons has escaped the urbanized lands. There's a reason why KK is pretty much hopping from island to island in this game. We didn't even talk about KK Slider, who's mostly consistent throughout the entire series. It's not really worth mentioning too much. But I guess I'm going to kind of cut the New Horizons talk short there because there's not too much more to add to it. We could get a little bit more into specific characters, but there isn't too much other than like the Able sisters have kind of split back up again because of the whole we want to move to an urban island. LaBelle's not so sure. She still has some ties back home, so she's kind of still like she'll pay a visit. She'll come see her sisters every once in a while, that kind of thing. Tortimer's fucking dead also, just as like a FYI for New Horizons. Tortimer is fucking dead, so he is nowhere to be found. Now, I know that's a bit of a maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. You never know. Animal Crossing New Horizons is a part of a modernized world. It can be changed with time. They will update this game. It has been getting updates. Plenty of updates have reintroduced old characters, so we'll see. There's a whole thing with Brewster, too, that I didn't get into. Probably, I could have talked about Blathers the Owl as well. Not really super relevant, though. Just kind of more like fun details that, with what I've said, I'd hope you could reconsider their roles throughout the entire timeline. Unfortunately, I don't have like a nice timeline layout like the Kirby video here, but we do have something fun to look at to wrap this video up, which is this article on The Verge, which is what happened, by the way, when I googled Animal Crossing lore. This was the very first thing that popped up, so I was like, okay, top hit, if you will. There's plenty of other stuff I could have read, like this Mashable one or whatever. I'm not doing that. Let's take a look through the horror that roils beneath your happy hamlet by Laura Hudson. One of Nintendo's greatest weirdest strengths has always been its ability to create something that nobody asked for, make it that wanted anyway. Animal Crossing's long but does something darker lie beneath the cheerful exterior? Animal Crossing has always been a game that is strange as it is cute, full of odd ticks and design choices that raise probing questions about what exactly is going on in the larger world of this woodland hamlet. Some might suggest that Animal Crossing is its own answer, an adorable, absurdist experience that exists purely to delight. If you prefer this reading, feel free to exit now. So now we're getting deep. We're going to go down the rabbit hole here, the rabbit hole. Closer examination, particularly of the Pocket Camp mobile game. Now, I didn't even cover this. So this is something I'm actually unfamiliar with. I haven't even touched this. Okay, I did play it like once. I tried it once, and it just didn't really click. Reveals something much more unsettling, a dark mirror that inadvertently reflects some of the most ruthless and dehumanizing elements of modern society and how they can degrade our social and ethical bonds. Damn! Wow! Okay, I was talking just like, urbanization and that reality. This shit goes fucking deep, bro. Okay. Some animals are more equal than others. Now, okay, that actually does raise a good point. Even in New Horizons, you can get a fish. You can catch fishes. That's normal. Fishes and bugs are normal. But then you can get a bird cage with a little bird in it, or you can get a hamster cage with a little hamster in it. And then there are bird villagers and hamster villagers, and the games just kind of ignore that. Let's see if this kind of this probably gets to that. Let me read it. Chances are things are going to get weird because animals occupy a fraught, complex space in real-life human culture where they can be categorized sometimes interchangeably as both friends and food. Intelligent, sensitive animals like pigs are alternately treated as beloved pets, delicious snacks dotted on with parental affection. Okay, let's take it easy there. A world that imagines animals who walk, talk, form complex interpersonal relationships inevitably brings dichotomy to the fore, either by addressing it directly or ignoring it entirely. As an explicitly family-friendly game, Animal Crossing chooses to do the latter, and moral consequences. And the moral consequences are considerable. For starters, there's the question of food itself. While many villagers, like the cat and wolf characters, are traditional predators, we see them living harmoniously with prey animals like birds and rabbits. But all the Animal Crossing characters do eat certain animals, including shrimp, a wide variety of fish, which are depicted as smaller and mercifully not anthropomorphized. One might assume these creatures are considered fair game for consumption because of their low intelligence, but this theory doesn't hold up for long. Squid, which in real world are cognitively sophisticated enough to use tools and commit acts of deception, are routinely caught, sold, and eaten in Animal Crossing. Cows, pigs, and chickens routinely host gleeful barbecues with skewer of meat roast over plates. Apparently no inner turmoil about the fact that it was flayed from the body of a fellow cow. And then there's Goose. Inexplicably not a goose at all, but with a rather large chicken. Like all the characters, you won't come visit your campsite to possess a certain series of items that he desires. Usually this means crafting Goose has something darker in mind. Requests that he characters as a little favor. Oh, he's not only asking you to put a hit out on a fellow bird, a corpse for scrunch. Is the turkey in question a hated foe, or is this just some cannibalistic fetish he likes to indulge? I gotta give credit where it's due. Laura Hudson, thank you for covering the one game I missed in this series. This is fucking great. Despite the wide variety of avian characters in the game, including penguins, chickens, ducks, and owls, you can also own a bird that lives inside a cage. Yeah, see, they cover it here. And there's no reaction for the other characters. How can characters like Jay and Goose be so nonchalant about the imprisonment and enslavement of a fellow bird? Well, okay. Now, fan theories can go crazy with this shit. One time, a friend of mine, a close friend, he was saying how he thinks his fan theory of Animal Crossing is that it's in a post-apocalyptic universe, and that the animals are people who are mutated into animals. So, it's possible it's just a regular-ass bird, but these birds are not regular-ass birds. They are different. Now, I don't really personally subscribe that it's post-apocalypse. I feel like that's a little too far. It's not really the tone that I think is worth bringing up. I don't really think that Animal Crossing is as dark as this is implying. I think it's safe to say that that's kind of the idea, is that it is just like a different species. These are birds, sure, but this is like a smaller and not as intelligent bird, so it doesn't count as a sentient being like them. Which is why none of them really care, because they acknowledge that, sure, maybe there should be a line of dialogue that's like a little existential crisis from like Apollo or something. It's like, I don't know, man, that's pretty fucking weird. I don't know, you ever just like look at the little bird in the cage and be like, that kind of looks like me. It's kind of fucked up. I mean, sure, that could be a thing, but it doesn't really have to be. Anyways, similarly, cat character and craft a cat tower, which is classified as a pet item. So especially in the other campers are clearly not pets. Who is a pet? And the cat can. I mean, this is kind of getting a little too silly. I think. I thought that I was sort of crossing the line a little bit with the whole Turtimer's fucking dead thing, but like, I don't know. Like, do you think that this is maybe a little much? We need to talk about Stitches. Yeah, okay. Several characters posing disturbing existential questions about their mere presence. Hopkins, who appears to be an inflatable toy rabbit. Okay, all right. I mean, not even I'm that crazy about this. Most disturbing of all, stitches, teddy bears. I mean, I love this article. Don't get me wrong; it's pretty great. I'm digging the vibe, but I also don't really think I need to spend the whole time reading the whole thing. Some dogs go to heaven. Let's just say this is extra credit reading for this video if you want to really do the deep dive here. Holy shit. So what are we to make of the notion of the soul in the Animal Crossing universe? Or at least how the characters regard it? Well, if we're asking religious questions of the Animal Crossing universe, I feel like we have taken too many steps in a specific direction that is not helpful to figuring out the lore. That is not really lore relevant, unless we're going to talk about how religion has informed the universe, but I really don't think it has, unless we want to get technical and start talking about the holiday characters like the Jack and the pumpkin head Jack guy, the Halloween guy with the jack-o'-lantern on his head. His name's Jack. Or if we want to talk about Jingle, who's like this magic little reindeer Santa Claus. But, it's him over there, is that guy. But wait, the rabbit hole goes... wait. Like, that many animals acknowledge a higher being... Yeah. Well, that's the thing here. That's a huge aspect of this whole video, the whole concept. You have to leave it to the imagination. Animal Crossing is like a canvas in that way, where there's a lot of that, and I wanted to express that today. Gyroids are there's a whole thing. Basically, if you want to go further, you want to go deeper than what I did today, this is the best way to do it. I think this article sums up about every kind of thing, any way of looking at Animal Crossing. If you want to look at it in the most uncharitable way, maybe is the right way of putting it, this is probably the way to do that, I think. So if you want to take a look at it, I would recommend it. Thank you to, again, all the people whose footage I completely just used without asking. I'm sorry. maybe that's not the right, maybe that's a bad thing, but I'm sorry. I just wanted to just go through it. It's not like their footage was, it's not like I'm pretending I didn't use it. So yeah, that's all. It's just like full disclosure, basically. Thank you for watching. This is easily the longest video I have done in a long time, maybe ever. So, appreciate you tuning in. I hope this was interesting, or at least if you're an Animal Crossing fan, you made it this far. Huge thanks to you. You probably lost me way earlier at some point in reality, but I doubt anyone will make it this far. But if you did, I very much appreciate that kind of tune-in listening ship here. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you have a fantastic day, night, or whatever. I'll see you in tomorrow's video. Peace out.